Hey, thanks for clicking on one of our videos. If you're a Baylor fan, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell if you want to join us for a live stream soon. This is Please Bear With Me. Enjoy. We're doing this March Madness bracket where we're looking at all these great players from across Baylor history. And I was super curious, like, you're a guy who grew up in the Northeast, not even close to Texas, right? And
Walter Abercrombie was my guy. Because
there
when
you
I
go.
was a kid, he was on the Steelers. And even though I was in Philly, and Philly and Pittsburgh are sort of like different states in themselves, but it was when the Steelers started to fall off. So they had a high draft pick and they took Walter. And I was like, who is this guy? So that was one of my, I knew Singletary went to Baylor, obviously, but Walter was the second guy who I was like, oh, wow, this is a Baylor guy. So that's when Baylor really came on my radar.
Well, that's great. And that's what I wanted to ask you is, like, as a guy from the Northeast, who are the guys from across history, across the eras that you're like, that's what I think of when I think of Baylor football? So Singletary, Abercrombie.
I mean, Singletary was the guy. I mean, he was so good. When I was a kid, I can remember – I remember my brother Kevin, who was 8 years older than me. His buddy Joey Utch is over at the house, and Joey Utch is telling a story, which I'm sure wasn't true, but that Mike Singletary was such an absolute psycho about football that his coach, who I guess would have been Grant Taft, right?
Yeah.
Had to play opera music for him to settle down before the game because he was out of his mind. Now, that's almost 99% not true, but what my point is, like, there were like wives' tales about Mike Singletary making their way all the way to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, about his time at Baylor. So he was the guy. Singletary for me is the guy. And I'm not saying he should be the number one guy this whole March Madness tournament you have. But for me, as an impactful Baylor player, I think I would have to say Mike Singletary. I mean, it's kind of too easy, but it's just the truth.
Yeah, I mean,
Scotty, you have the graphic of Mike. You have the graphic. I just want to show y'all something, man. And I haven't said anything because it's a little frightening. Just imagine you playing football. You got a ball in your hand, and this is what the guy looks like. I mean, look at. You can see the white. You can't tell if Joe Paul's eyes are open or closed. But if someone's running at you like that, I mean, that's why because I don't want to have nightmares about it even today. But I don't know if the story is true, but it's believable when you look at a guy that has eyes like that popping out of his head, running at you, probably screaming. Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine.
And to that era, and this is obviously before your teams in the Art Briles days. When I was a kid and I was in high school and I was obsessed with college football, Bill Walsh College Football came out on EA Sports. You could play it on Sega, and there were like 15 or 20 like current teams, and you could line it up. Like Chip Hillary was the quarterback of Kansas. He was number 18. So I knew it was him, and he was real fast, all on down the line. Like the players lined up with their numbers. That's when the whole Ed O'Bannon and all that stuff, those lawsuits came into play, right? Because they're using your guy's number. Nobody's getting paid. Well, Baylor had an all-time great team. And it was, I think, that team, I guess, what was it, 80, 81, whatever Singletary's senior year was, with Grant Taft was the head coach, where I think you guys were like top 3 in the country, 1, 2, or 3. And that was the great team. But I remember Singletary, his team was also elite, which kind of lends to his legend as a player at Baylor. I mean, he was able to elevate a program that wasn't really looked at as the time as one of the key brands in college football. That's how good he was as a middle linebacker.
Well, and truly, like to give him credit, in comparison to like an RG3, Jalen Petrie, some of these other guys that come up in the conversation, Baylor's resources at the time were so poor. Like I have heard stories. I know these stories are true. Grant Taft on visits, the goal was take the recruit to Grant Taft's office and don't let him see any of the rest of the facilities. Don't let him see the weight room. Don't let him see the locker room. Don't let him see, because it was so bad. I mean, even Terrence, probably like your early years were when it was finally starting to turn, and it still wasn't close to what we've got now. But like Grant Taft was working with nothing except whatever charisma he had and whatever he could promise parents. Like, so the fact that Singletary stepped into that poor of a situation and elevated Baylor to that level really is remarkable. Really is remarkable.